Good morning, everybody. So today's topic, what is today's date? I don't even know anymore. So it's May 30th, 2020. I just want to warn you in advance, the spirits are really, really, really active this morning. So if my screen goes fuzzy, which it's already done that a few times this morning, I'll try and notice that and kick the spirits away from me. And if I start to ramble about something that doesn't make sense according to our topic, then it's just the spirits talking through me. And if it makes sense to you, great. And I probably won't even notice. And if it doesn't make sense to you, then it'll probably make sense to somebody else. So we'll just let that kind of be. So today's topic is pain. Physical pain, emotional pain, mental pain, pain, and how one affects the others and affects us as a whole. And it's the biggest reason as to why when we have physical pain, mental pain, or emotional pain, it is also difficult to feel better sometimes, especially when you go to a certain doctor or a certain facility, a certain modality to help with one of those pains, but then yet in the end, you still have some form of pain or now different pain. So it goes into line with what I do for the business, treating mind, body, soul, and eventually the mind through my master's degree in mental health counseling. But for now, some of the mental pain also gets addressed while doing myofascial release, which also helps with physical as well as emotional pain. And then spiritual sessions that also help with physical, emotional, and mental. And the reason that they all help is how they're connected. So we're going to talk about that today. But before we start, I found it interesting because I like to present the medical world's view of certain things when we start talking about these kind of topics. Because even though myofascial release is a proven medical modality for helping with our physical pain, it's still not widely accepted within the medical community. So I always find that interesting because when something works, how can you deny that it works? But it is what it is. So when I looked up through the medical dictionary, physical pain, their definition is, and I'm going to read both of these next two things out loud. So if it looks like I'm reading, I am. Physical pain is an unpleasant sensation that can range from mild, localized discomfort to agony. Pain has both physical and emotional components, and the physical part of the pain results from a nerve sensation or stimulation. Same thing in some ways. So that is their definition of physical pain. Very short, very simple. Also indicates that, it has also emotional components. When I searched on emotional pain within the medical dictionary, it came up with mental pain. And when I selected mental pain, it came up with the definition that is strictly just under the word pain, has the reference of mental pain. And in it says, it is defined as an unpleasant feeling that is conveyed to the brain by sensory neurons. The discomfort signals actual or potential injury to the body. Oh, let me reread that because that just sounds funny. I think it's just a little too small, so I'm trying to read it from a distance. It is defined as an unpleasant feeling that is conveyed to the brain by sensory neurons. The discomfort signals actual or potential injury to the body. However, pain is more than a sensation or the physical awareness of pain. It also includes perception, the subjective interpretation of the discomfort. Perception gives information on the pain's location, intensity, and sometimes about its nature. The various conscious and unconscious responses to both sensation and perception, including the emotional response, add further definition to the overall concept of pain. That alone from a medical perspective, sums up what I was just saying in the beginning, that it's all connected. That physical affects emotional, affects mental. Mental affects physical and emotional. Emotional affects physical and mental. Why we don't focus on that description, which is considered the general description of pain versus physical pain, is beyond me. But regardless, that's what medical dictionary defines those things. So with that said, now I'm going to be me, and I'm going to talk how I talk and how I convey this information. So we know it's all connected because we are one being, right? Our body, our soul, it's one. Within that, everything in between, all the ooey gooey stuff, all the physical aspect of who we are, everything that makes us, our body, as well as the energy within it, is now all connected into one. It's not separate. And we tend to separate everything. You know, everything is this. And I do this to myself sometimes too. I say, well, maybe it's this, or maybe it's that, or maybe it's this. But then in the end, I say, or it's all of those things, because I realize as I'm saying it, how can we separate a thing as an issue when it's everything? Everything affects us. And that's why we have all of our senses, you know, to enable us to guide us through this world, to be able to produce the information that we're looking for so we can actually move through it, right? So when it comes to physical pain, emotional pain, mental pain, it's all connected. And so that's why sometimes when we address a certain modality for that pain, it doesn't always go away. Or maybe it goes away temporarily, but then it comes back. Or maybe sometimes it's stemming from something completely different, the emotional side or the mental side. And that physical pain won't go away until you deal with that emotional pain and that mental pain. So, for example, I'll give you some examples here. And this could be universal and stemming from the same thing. So let's say you're just going about your day, you're in a good mood, there's really nothing bothering you, no pain, no issues, no emotional discomfort, no mental discomfort. And when I say mental discomfort, what I'm referring to is you're stressed out. You know, you might be thinking of something you have to do a month from now, tomorrow, whatever the case is, that's creating stress onto your system because either you're stressing about it, you're worrying about it, you're anticipating it to go a certain way, and yet you're scared it's not going to. So that's what I would consider mental discomfort, mental pain, right? Thought. Complete 100% in your mind, complete thought. So you don't have any of those things. You're just going about your day. Maybe you got traumas in the past, really not thinking about, really, you know, subconsciously it's always there. But, you know, we're going to put that aside because that's just an added layer, right? So you're going about your day and you stub your toe. We've all stubbed our toe. And it hurt really bad, to the point where it hurt so bad you thought you broke it, or you thought you split it off, or you just figured there's no way your toe looks normal right this moment. That pain in that little baby toe is so excruciating that in that moment you're probably even like, oh God, I can't even move. So you have that physical pain, right? Physical pain. So you're thinking, okay, well, that's just I stubbed my toe. But yet when you stubbed your toe, maybe subconsciously it reminds you of when you stubbed your toe when you were running away from something, physically running from something. Whether it was danger, whether it was a relationship, whether it was running to something to help somebody. But you were in an emotional state of running from a prior event that you'd never dealt with. You just kind of sucked it up. You know, we're all born with the training, for whatever reason, to suck things up. And then we're told to suck it up. You're okay. You're not bleeding. You're fine. You know, you'll be fine. Suck it up. Don't worry about it. Don't get angry. Don't get sad. Don't do these things, right? You suck it up. The problem with that is all that's energy. And so when we shove that energy in and keep it down versus responding as need be out to the world, that energy just kind of keeps rippling within us. So now here you are, good day, nothing's bothering you, you're not thinking of anything, you're not stressed out today, you stub your toe, and this prior experience where in an emotional aspect of it gets surfaced because that energy is rippling within us. Now you're thinking of that emotional moment of time, whatever that was, running away from something, running to something, whatever the case was. And now mentally you're processing it over and over and over and over in your head. And so now you have the physical pain of the current issue of stubbing your toe, to the emotional, undealt emotional issues from the prior time you stubbed your toe when there was a true emotional state going on. And now you're adding into the mental pain and discomfort of all of those things. And how long it takes us to move through it depends on those layers and how we process it. So if you're not dealing with something emotionally that's happened before, it might just be that mental thing, more mental pain of just like, oh, here I go, I stubbed my toe again. How many times can I possibly stub my toe? I mean, come on, I stubbed my toe again. Or how stupid is this? Or now I have to put ice on it, and now I have to do this. And so now that mental pain is now creating additional emotional crap. Because again, we as people, we deal with it all, but yet we don't deal with it. We just keep it held up inside us. So now they're all intertwining with each other, moving around, not playing nice, and yet we're not dealing with it. It's sitting inside us and we're just sucking it up. And then it could happen vice versa. You could just be sitting there, having a bad day, really stressed out because, the bills are due and maybe you don't have enough money. And so you're stressed. You're thinking about how you're going to pay these bills. You're walking around stressed out, which adds a little bit of an emotional component on top of that. And then you stub your toe. And now it feels even worse because now you're dealing with all these other layers. So it all intertwines. And so when we kind of think about, pain, we tend to try and focus on a certain thing. Like we're not physically hurt, but yet we hurt. Or at least you don't remember being physically hurt. Emotional pain is just as terrible, if not worse, because emotional pain stems from the mind as well as our feelings, and how well we deal with feelings. Most of us don't do very well at all. Again, sucking it up, holding it in, not trying to burden somebody else, which is my biggest problem. And all that then turns into physical pain because we start to tighten up and tighten down. Personally, I believe it's why I got breast cancer. Every time since my son died, I thought of him. Emotionally, it hurt. And over time, I started to feel that every time I thought of him, I could feel a tightening around my heart, as if like squeezing and trying to protect it in a lot of ways. That was my internal defense mechanism because of having to deal with losing Morgan while being in the world that's also not grieving at the same time or the same level as me. Yeah, that shadow that you just saw, that was a spirit walking past. Sorry. But anyhow, so my heart, I started to eventually feel it tighten down. But it wasn't until after I had cancer and went through treatment that I started to feel that way. And once we can feel it and feel where it's affecting us, then we can look at it a little bit differently. But until we acknowledge and know where it's coming from, or maybe where it's stemming through, we can't do anything about it. So there comes some level of subconscious there. But how do you get there? I'm not that enlightened. I mean, I am. And to a lot of people, I'm really enlightened. But I still live in the physical world, even though spiritually I have all this access of information. I'm still me. I'm still Bonnie. And I still have to deal with these physical issues and everyday life like a normal person. And there are things I don't want to deal with. I didn't want to deal with losing my child. One, I just didn't want to do it. Two, in some ways by doing it, does that mean I forget him? No. But do I feel that way sometimes? Absolutely. So these mental things and emotional things that we're doing absolutely tightens us up. And in my case, it tightened up around my heart, which then created breast cancer in that breast near my rib cage, near my heart. I also got skin cancer on the back, directly across from that same spot on my back in a tattoo I have for him. But again, I didn't know it. It wasn't until doing the work, doing myofascial release to help me through my pain physically, emotionally, and mentally, to process certain things that I didn't even realize happened, that I was holding on to regarding Morgan's death. And until we process these things mentally and emotionally and physically, we're still stuck. We're still stuck in that same routine and that same pattern and that same discomfort. And we're not letting it go. Our cup is full and we're just adding more crap into it. Mostly because it's how we're dealing. If we're going to just keep shoving it in or pushing it away, even though we're not really pushing it away because that energy is hitting us, then it's going to keep getting in there. And the more it gets in there, the more it gets in there until your cup is full. And either you have an explosion of physical pain, cancer, illness, autoimmune issues, every kind of diagnosis that's out there, or you just slowly start to shut down and become more and more disengaged with everything, because not everything has to end in physical pain. The dysfunction's already there. Our body already has certain dysfunctions from birth all the way through just life, how we hold ourselves. And we may not have pain for a long time for dysfunction until one day we wake up in excruciating pain. But it's all combined and it's all associated. And when I say dysfunction, meaning, I'm sure you can see, just me sitting here. Hold on, let me move my hair. One shoulder, and the hair's really in the way. One shoulder looks higher than the other. That is a dysfunction because I'm off balance, or yeah, I think it's this way. I don't know, it's backwards on the screen. So you can see it though. People who work behind computers, their shoulders are rounded because they're constantly being pulled this way. Which then creates a lot more different issues because one area of the body, as we know through myofascial release, affects the whole body. Because to be in gravity, our body has to compensate. So if one shoulder is higher than the other, that means one hip, the opposite hip, is going to be higher than the other. Then we have rotations within the system. So we have all these dysfunctions that we either have starting at birth or slowly over time start to get. And then add in traumas. Let's go with physical trauma. You got hit by a car, right? A lot of people have a hard time with recovering from car accidents. And it's because they don't realize that all these things are connected. So if you got hit by a car, and let's say you were driving and you see it coming, you're holding onto the steering wheel really tight. You don't know what to do. You're in your mind trying to think, how do I get out of this? Can I get out of this? In that split second that it's all happening. And then your foot, what's your foot doing? Your foot is firmly planted on the brake if you happen to be at a stop position. If you're driving and it's about to happen, you're probably trying to decide, do you push on the gas or do you step on the brake? So your foot's in this hesitation moment of which pedal do I push? And meanwhile, you see it all coming. So in those moments, you're holding on to the steering wheel for dear life. You're trying to process what's about to happen. You either have your foot on a pedal or you're trying to figure out which one to do, and then you get hit. And you didn't deal with all of that. So you go to the doctor, they do everything that they need to do, you rest, you do this, but you're still in chronic pain. You're still not feeling okay. You have to let go of that emotional state, mental state. So anytime I work with people, I tell them how to do that. A lot of it stems around the triggers. What are you re-experiencing every time you go through that intersection or that stop sign or that light or that section of the road or by that house? Those emotions and mental triggers are there and they're triggering and they're hitting you hard. And so if you don't deal with those, the physical pain never goes away. So it's all connected, 100%. For me, obviously I have some dysfunction. I had a lot of dysfunction that I didn't know was until I met Inner Circle Rehabilitation. And that's a shout out to Inner Circle Rehabilitation because they changed my life forever. They're located now in Langhorne. Great physical therapy place. They not only changed my life physically from chronic knee pain, as well as through myofascial release, changing my structure to stop that, but also to help me get over an airborne food allergy, which again was associated with emotional trauma. So we'll get in that in a moment, even though I know I talked about that in various sessions. But then they also, how do I word this? By allowing my body to experience these physical changes that I thought I was going to have to live with until I got knee replacements or until the day I died. I knew at that moment I needed to incorporate it, myofascial release, into my practice of spiritual work because it's all connected. And so without meeting myofascial or inner circle rehabilitation and being introduced to myofascial release, my life would be still in a lot of physical pain, airborne allergies, and God forbid if that were to happen and Morgan died. I honestly don't believe I would be here today. I really don't. And not because of suicide or anything like that, but because my body was shutting down, even though I knew this technique was out there. I knew I needed to deal with the emotional loss as well as the mental loss of my son. I knew all these things, and I was still physically dying inside. So it is something that we talk about healing somebody as a whole, and the idea of what that is, this is what that is. Understanding that there's various different modalities out there, even if it seems strange or unconventional, or religion and culture tells you that, you know, these things can't exist or these things don't work the same or that they're separate. Nothing is separate. Everything is connected. We're all connected. We're all born with abilities. We're all just trying to make things work for ourselves while trying to do right by the people around us, while trying to help somebody else. Those things aren't separate, but yet sometimes we think they are. But if they're not, so if they're not separate, why do we separate things within our own self and within our own body? So emotional pain and mental pain tend to kind of skirt the line as the same thing, but they truly have their own separate issues. Because mentally, you know, I can process Morgan's death in various ways, but emotionally, every time that I see him from a spiritual perspective, or he leaves to go do whatever he's doing from a spiritual perspective, and I feel that loss all over again. I'm not thinking necessarily, subconsciously I am, but emotionally I'm missing his energy. Or emotionally, as soon as I see him, it's like I just want to hug him because that's the mom in me, right? So emotionally, my emotions are stirred up. And if I allow those emotions to stir up longer than a fraction of a second, you know how we process things, then mentally I start to think about him, and then physically I start to feel pain again. So we can't keep separating these things. And the more that our healthcare system can actually get out there and start to incorporate all of these kind of modalities, even if they don't specialize in it, but refer it out for somebody to say, you know what, hey, you've been dealing with this car accident for 6 months, a year. Physically, you should, by medical terms, be okay. You're not. Why is that? Well, could be physical still, because, you know, they might be working on your neck and not realize, okay, well, you know, your hips are not okay as well. But they're only working on your neck because that's where your pain is. And that's where myofascial release comes in. Or you're still processing the trauma of the accident every time you go through it, every time you go past that section. And or emotionally, you're still dealing with it. Because maybe that day, you know, you were feeling guilty about something. You know, maybe you just had a fight with somebody. And so you're dealing with all that crap too. And now this. Or maybe you were, you know, somebody who's always on time or needed to get somewhere, or wherever you were going, you needed to be there at that moment for whatever reason. And you didn't make it there. Or you didn't make it there on time. So now you're dealing with that. So the biggest thing that I can say about pain is it's not just one thing. It's absolutely all three things. Just the degree of which one might be a little bit more painful than the other. Seek out different modalities that will work for you. Because it's not just about spiritual work, energy work, myofascial release, mental health. It could be that you never can get out of your head, never can meditate. For someone like me, I can't do yoga effectively because every time I start to get into a meditative state, into these poses, my spiritual abilities kick on. And now they're talking to me. That's work. So that changes my processing. So I need to do something that I'm still thinking, but it's not thinking at the same time. So you have to find what's right for you, but know that it's not just one thing. So incorporate something physical. Incorporate some myofascial work, especially to get over the hump. Once you get over the hump, you can do home treatments. That's how I teach people who come to see me for treatment. I get them over the hump, and then you also know things to do at home to keep you on a healthy journey. And then you see somebody for myofascial release when something new stirs up, or maintenance. I see people sometimes once a year for maintenance because that's all they need because they're doing the work at home. Our bodies are in constant, what's the words I'm looking for? Sorry, a spirit tried to interrupt me real quick, so I had to push her away. Sorry. She almost had me saying what I was gonna say to somebody out here. But anyhow, our body is constantly receiving information in from all senses, and then how we're interpreting them it depends on what the information is, our prior experiences to it, or our knowledge of it. And then how that manifests that energy within us and how it ripples all through us then changes its course to be what it is. So we absolutely need to, on a regular basis, continue with self-treatment. And I will say, I don't do it enough myself. I will be honest with that. I do really good for a while, especially before Morgan died. I was doing it all the time, every day. And since he died, I sometimes find it a struggle. And again, I know that again affects the pain levels. But it's what my mental state is right now because I'm not taking that time for myself. If I take the time for myself and do my self-work and my self-treatment, things do get easier and things get better. And we could feel good for a while and not have any pains. Doesn't mean they're not there. We're just not feeling them. So when it comes to pain, change your mindset from, I need this to be over, or why can't this fix this? And you need to change it to, pain's always going to be there. Which degree, which type, how it affects the other areas of pain changes with each situation and with each moment of time. It's how we process it when we feel it and knowing what works for us. For me, what works for me is getting myofascial release, as well as thinking about, verbalizing what I'm feeling, even if the person that I'm verbalizing it to doesn't want to hear it, or maybe I think it'll be too hard for them, and maybe it is, and they cry, but verbalize it, get it out. And if you can't do that with a person because maybe the person's the problem, or maybe the issue is around that person, it stems from that person, do some fire ceremonies. Get it out. Fire ceremonies is truly getting that energy out of you from a verbal perspective. We tend to not want to say certain things because we don't want it to become true, or we don't want to add to the level of, well, if I If I know this and I say this, then that's going to make it worse. No, you're getting it out. It might be worse, but that's not something you can control. The only thing you control is your actions and what you're doing. And so if you have pain, seek out various modalities until you find the ones that work for you. For some, it truly is acupuncture. I've never tried it. I don't know if putting needles in certain areas work. I'm assuming it does because it is an old traditional form of medicine. And I believe the reason that it works for some and works for others, it stems from all this. If you emotionally go into it like this isn't going to work, then it's probably not going to work. And then add into the fact that your body dysfunction, where, a certain area that they're reaching for, that pinpoint accuracy of, I can't think of the word for it right this second, but meridian that they're shooting for, they go to it because the textbook says it's here, but that's not there for you because of your dysfunction, because you have a shoulder that's too high, or a leg that, your hip is up, or, your hips rotated, or your neck is forward, which is one of my problems. I get the hump in the back of my neck because my neck is forward. So you're not going to hit, the acupuncturist is not going to hit the areas perfectly where it's need be. And then you have some people who do it and they're like, oh my God, it's the best thing in the world and it works so great and this, that, and the other thing. And again, that all is connected. So if you try out different modalities, which you should, see what works for you. There's a lot out there. Go into it with an open mind and seek out multiple ones to see what works and what is the right combination of plan. All right. Let me just check. I think there's a question here. So I'll put it out here. Sharon asks, I'm trying to determine if my exhaustion affects the pain in my shoulder, or does the pain cause my exhaustion? So based upon everything that we've spoke about so far, I'm sure you're probably thinking at this point, it's both. And that's where we have to get out of that mindset that it's either this or it's that. Because in the end, it's both, plus something else. So spiritually, I can ask real quick just to give you a more, defined answer, because I know as people, even myself, we want the answers. We want to be told that it's this. We want that. And that makes it hard because since we want that, that's what we're always seeking. So, you have pain in your shoulder from dysfunction. If you go look at your shoulder in the mirror or have somebody look at it for you, you will see one shoulder is higher than the other. We all have a degree of it. Some are a little more dramatic than others, but it's just the way that our body is presenting in gravity. You also have rounded shoulders. You also don't sleep appropriately. Your pillow is not the right kind of pillow for your neck. And so when that pillow is not the right for your neck, your head is being pushed forward or pushed backwards, or you just don't sleep well. So now you add in physical pain that will create some exhaustion, as well as not sleeping appropriately, which will cause exhaustion, as well as contribute to your physical pain because you're exhausted and you have a slight ache. And now that feels worse today because it's just adding and adding and adding. And then add in all the emotional stuff that you're going through, and now it becomes even more. So it's everything. So getting a different pillow definitely is going to help with the neck position for you and help you sleep a little bit better. Getting some work done on your shoulder, and there are some self-help techniques that I'm going to do in the future. Maybe I'll do that one next week. We'll talk about, let's do that next week because we're talking about pain. So next week will be self-help for pain, and we'll do physical pain, mental pain, and emotional pain. And so helping with some self-help, because I know right now due to COVID, it makes it very limited on where you can go and the help you can seek out. So from a physical perspective, I'll show you a couple things that will help with the shoulder. I won't physically show you. Maybe I will. It depends on if Dave wants to volunteer and hold the camera while I do techniques, or if he wants to do the techniques while I talk about it, or I'll just tell you how to do them. But what you will need, and what I tell people to get for their own self-help treatment at home, is tennis balls and foam rollers. But a foam roller, if you're going to buy one, you want a 3 foot long by 6 inch diameter, because you can do more things with it, as well as treat multiple body areas at the same time. Because in the end, what is the biggest reason we don't self-treat and we don't get the help we need? Time and money. Even for myself, I have time to self-treat, but I don't make the time for myself. And if I had to make time for myself where it took like 2 hours to do all the self-help treatments I need for myself, I wouldn't do it. But if I can do multiples in a 10-15 minute session, then I'm going to do it. So those are the two things. So we'll talk about the various types of pain and how to help through them next week. Okay, so write that down so I don't forget. Okay, so where was I at? So yes, so it's all connected, Sharon. It really is. So next week, you'll learn some self-help techniques for the pain. Get a different pillow, and honestly, the best pillow, because you have the same issue I have. You have a short neck. And so with a short neck, most pillows they usually push me forward. So the only pillows that I originally found that would work for me was kid pillows. But unfortunately, kids' pillows, they kind of wear down faster. And I think it's because, they either grow out of them, or just, kids are much more less gentle with their stuff. Until I found, and this is another kind of shout out, but it was the only pillow that I found that worked for all the years I've looked at pillows. I mean, I gravitated pillows trying to find the right one. But Bob's Discount Furniture has a really great pillow. It's a form of like a Tempur-Pedic. And once I got that pillow, I was sleeping so much better. I wasn't waking up with neck pain. Even the first time that Dave had slept over, his sleep apnea was better as well. So, and that's another thing. When you have something like that, where you have a sleep apnea issue, you're not going to sleep as well. Your body's not getting everything it needs. And like we talked about in a prior session, sleep is what our body needs. It allows us to heal from the day, or at least attempt to heal from the day. Our body is an amazing thing if we just get out of the way and let it heal, and not get stuck on the emotional and mental and physical aspects of it. From a pain perspective, I also tell people who tell me that they have a MRI or a CAT scan or something, an ultrasound, that's going to show what's wrong. And they get very either frustrated when it says that nothing's wrong, because something's wrong. And anytime somebody tells me either that or in advance that they're going to get it done, I always tell them that it's either a fascia issue and or an emotional or mental issue. And if we address those issues, then you can get better. And it's the same thing for myself. I have to remind myself that as well. Recently, CAT scan, I said to myself, I know if it comes back that it's normal, then I know it's a scar from my surgeries, the scarring that's in there, because that creates pain as well, prior surgeries, as well as emotional and mental stress about everything that's going on with it. So it's just layers, and those layers are all interwove like a basket, and we're just holding it in there. So we got to get it out. So anybody who has even just scarring from surgeries or an accident, they will create pain and dysfunction as well. All right, what time is it? We're close to our end. Any other questions that anybody has regarding pain? If not, we'll end a little early today. No? All right, wonderful. All right, everybody, I will see you guys next Saturday. And again, we're going to talk about self-help for pain. The things to do for the physical pain, the mental pain, and the emotional pain. And the mental one's actually quite interesting, and it helped me a lot when it came to Morgan. And it wasn't just going to talk to somebody about my feelings. So until then, enjoy, and I will see everybody then.